This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Stephen A., should the Cavs want Rose back?
No, they shouldn't. I think that, it's one of those situations where you have to be concerned about the person. You listen to LeBron James, you heard the quotes from Dwayne Wade, you covered this league, you hear a lot of different things, and there are things that are going on off the court that are none of our business that Derrick Rose has to deal with. This is not the first time that he's had to depart from the team. At least this time he had the decency to inform the Cavs that he would not be there. Last year, if you remember, he was with the New York Knicks and he disappeared. He didn't call anybody. The New York Knicks actually sent folks out looking for him, and the team was petrified that something fatal may have happened to him. And so when you look at it from that perspective, there's a lot to be concerned about this guy. You got people in the streets in the city of Chicago that might chide him a little bit, even though that's his hometown, because when he was in the midst of a $90 million contract playing for the Chicago Bulls back a few years ago, he talked about how he was concerned about his health because he wanted to be able to take his kids to school and be healthy enough to walk to meetings and things of that nature. Nobody wanted to hear that. And then last year took place, and then this year this has happened. He's had 4 knee surgeries throughout his career. You look at the team that's presently constructed, there's really not room for him. Once Isaiah Thomas comes back, he's going to be your starting point guard. You have the best player in the world, LeBron James. In case no one has noticed, Dwayne Wade has been balling as of late, being the point guard for the second unit and leading them the way that he's been leading them. And so when you look at it from that perspective, from a basketball standpoint, it's suspect as to whether or not you're going to need him, not to mention the fact that his mental aptitude, his mental fortitude rather, his ability to deal with those adjustments, it may not be worth it for him mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. And then when you take off the court, he has an awful lot to deal with. Taking all of those things into consideration, under normal circumstances, you'd want a guy to be around the team because you'll say being around those guys, Max, is a good security blanket. It's comfort. Plus, it's enabling you to compete for a championship. So there's a lot of positives were coming back to the team. But if it was so positive, why would he feel compelled to leave to begin with? I think when you hear LeBron James, when you listen to the words that guys like him and Dwayne Wade have articulated, these are 2 highly intelligent and accomplished brothers who knows what it takes and knows what's required and sort of understand and really, really understands what extends beyond the court of play. For them to speak the way that they're speaking leads itself towards indicating what I've indicated. There's a lot of things to be concerned about with Derrick Rose off the court. He needs to focus on getting his life together and his life in order as opposed to being preoccupied with basketball.
Derrick Rose is a sports tragedy, in my view. The way Bo Jackson was. As great as Bo Jackson was in the heights he achieved in 2 sports, the question with him is the what if. What if he hadn't had the hip injury? What could Bo Jackson have done? We just got teased with that ability, a 200-yard rushing game and these titanic home runs that he hit for the Royals. And what could he have done had it not been for the injury? And Derrick Rose is like Bo Jackson to me. He won an MVP that should have been LeBron's. Nevertheless, he won it. He was this, as fearsome as Russell Westbrook is and great as John Wall is and all these guys. Athletically, Derrick Rose, to me, like Westbrook's comes not just from his athletic ability, but his level of aggression. Derrick Rose athletically had some fast, twitchy stuff that I thought nobody else had. He was just different. And I don't remember, Stephen A., if it was Marcellus Wiley or if it was the great Dr. Clapper, from 7:10 a.m., L.A. radio that you are now on, the Stephen A. Smith Show, who said it several years ago that Derrick Rose is like a Mack truck engine in a little sports car frame. Right? The engine was too powerful for the casing. And so he was like a boat that sprung a leak, and then he patches that up, and then another leak springs up, and after a while he just gets frustrated. He doesn't want to deal with it anymore. That's the one thing. That's the injury history of it all. And I can understand his frustration if we limit it to his physical maladies And what I would say is you play basketball until they stop paying. Basketball, baseball, this is not football, it's not boxing, MMA, where it's the same kind of health risk. I get that. But then there's a second thing that you mentioned, Stephen A. Not just LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, but if I see Stephen A. Smith sit there and say he has to get his life together off the court, it's none of our business, he needs to deal with that, then I take that very seriously, and I think our audience should too. So that's the second part of it, and maybe it's the more important part. So it's the physical situation that Derrick Rose is facing with injury, and then there's also his life. And both those things, I can understand if the frustration or the reality of it is he just can't go on. I would say if there's a way for him to go on, and I were the Cavs, I'd want the scoring off the bench. But if you can't rely on him being there because there are things that are out of his control, that's a different story.
Well, couple of things. Number one, ESPN had a report over the weekend talking about if he were to step away from the game, he would lose his $80 million contract with Adidas, or he'd lose something along those lines with Adidas. I'm hearing that may not be true, that even if he elected to step away, that the contract is ironclad, it wouldn't be that kind of a loss. If he knows he's going to get his money, from the things that I'm hearing emotionally about Derrick Rose, Max, I sincerely believe that it might be wise for him to step away from the game, at least for this season, to get his life together so he can get back on the court. And I think that we all should applaud the LeBron James of the world and D. Wade of the world. You don't have to get into specifics and reveal anything other than to say that right now he needs love and support from friends and family and others, as opposed to playing on a basketball court. Wherever he can get that, that's where he needs to be.
The game of life.